Okay.
So I didn't even ask. I'm ready to welcome everybody.
Yes.
Okay, good.
No, I'm not
Stuffing my mouth.
Oh, that's funny. Thanks for asking that. Good morning, everyone. I think we have a few more folks that are coming in, but I want to make sure we have time for questions at the end. And thank you all for coming. It feels early. I don't know if it feels early to you all or not. So I am Sonia Sutton. I'm the communication specialist at the UNC Center for Health Promotion and Disease Prevention. And we are one of the partner organizations that organize the Skills and Practices for Engaged Scholarship Seminar Series. And so Dr. Ammerman, who is our director, was not able to be here this morning, although she's hoping that she can come in by the end. But this seminar is going to focus on rural partnerships, and we are really excited that it also has to do with the UNC Food for All theme that we just started this year. So I'm going to turn it over to Molly and Daniella, and I will share the slides. We are also broadcasting this as a Google Hangout as an experiment to see if we can tape this and then make it available more widely later. So we are hopeful that this is all going to work. All right, let me know if you need anything.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you all for being here. So, like Sonia said, my name is Molly DeMarco. I'm a researcher and have an appointment in the Department of Nutrition in the School of Public Health. But I do most of my work and sit at the Center for Health Promotion and Disease Prevention, which is off campus. We're affiliated with all the different health professional schools here at UNC. And I have a team of folks here with me. I'll introduce them briefly, and they can say a little bit more about themselves when they stand up if they choose to. But Daniella Uslan is our project director for the project we're going to be talking about. Reverend Bill Kearney we have been community research partner, academic partners for 6 years, perhaps. So he's going to talk about his role on our project and our history. Brett Sheppard is our community garden manager, and we'll tell you a lot more about all the gardens and all of our rural communities that we partner with. And then Diana Montgomery is one of our community partners here in Orange County, in the rural part of the county. She works on one of the community gardens that we're working with. And so we're going to talk some about our project, how it got started, how we developed our partnerships in the 6 counties where we work. We'll give you a lot of information about the different projects and activities we do. And then at the end, I'll just come back up and talk a little more about how we're working to strengthen our partnerships, particularly how we're working with an anti-racism lens on all the work we do and really trying to shift to do more of that as we go forward. So for those of you pretty familiar with the state, this is where we have our partnerships. So we're down east in Sampson, Duplin, and Lenoir counties. We do work in our county, Orange County. Reverend Kearney is from Warren County, and that's where we've had a long-standing partnership there. And we're working out in Rockingham as well. So we've had long-standing partnerships in these counties with a lot of different studies and projects. But the project that we're talking about now is SNAP-Ed funding. So it's USDA funding for people who receive SNAP benefits. It's what the food stamp program is now called. So we've had that funding. We're just starting our 6th year of that. And it provides funding. Initially, it was all pretty much to do direct education with SNAP recipients around healthy eating and physical activity. But it's moved more into sort of our bailiwick around doing systems change, doing environmental work, looking at policies and how we can improve access in communities around healthy eating and physical activity. We work directly with SNAP recipients as our community partners and also the folks that attend and work on our activities. and we'll be talking way more. My folks to my left will be talking way more about how that actually has worked. So just some of the activities that we do. We have 18 community gardens. Brett's going to share more about that. We also are working on facilitating 2 food policy councils, one here in Orange County and one in Warren County that Reverend Kearney is heavily involved with. We've also been working on social marketing campaigns with farmers markets that take SNAP benefits to encourage folks to use their benefits for healthy food there. And we also have a Healthy Aisle project in Lenoir County. That's to look at moving fruits and vegetables and other healthy items to central locations in the store and encouraging people to go there and to make it easier for them to find it. And we'll talk a little more about that as well. So like I mentioned, we all of these counties were chosen because we had long-standing partnerships there. So when we first started working with this particular funding, we worked in Warren County because Reverend Kearney and I had 2 different funding mechanisms, 2 different grants working on agriculture with youth and doing some youth development and healthy eating. We had NIH funding and we had a TRACS grant as well to do that. So when we looked to start doing more with this funding around direct education, we decided to work with Reverend Kearney in that county. We also, as we were able to obtain more funding, we started looking to where we wanted to branch out. We're very interested in working in rural communities. There's other folks in the state who are working in larger areas, and we have partnerships and do a lot of work already in rural communities. So we looked for partners, people in the community where we'd already been doing work. We talked to a person that we had on our staff who was from the Duplin, Sampson area, and she connected us with folks. We had people already working in Rockingham County, and they connected us with people. We had contacts through the state health department who were also able to help us find people and network. And that's how we found our community partners and then started building those relationships. And we'll give you some little case studies of particular partnerships that we've developed. Reverend Kearney is not going to come up and tell you a little bit. He actually started out as an independent contractor with us as our community field coordinator, and starting October 1, he's now a full-time UNC staff member with us, and we're very excited.
Good morning. I'm quite appreciative for UNC for seeing and valuing the work that I did in the community. It's good to get paid for what I used to do for nothing, right? Because I wanted to help change some things in our community. So my role as community field coordinator, I listed assist garden managers to recruit participants and supporters, coordinate and evaluate community gardens, and provide day-to-day garden coordination, assist with garden visits, tours, nutrition and cooking classes, and plan community garden events and end-of-year celebration. I forgot to list that to serve on the local food policy council to make sure the voice of the underserved is represented, and also working with the summer meals expansion programs in the county.
Are you okay with this one?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to talk about this one?
This one there? No, you can do it.
So some of the ways we work to actually formalize the partnerships we have in the community is doing memoranda of understanding. So actually outlining what's expected from the university and what's expected from our partners, and making sure both sides sign that and that we go over that. Brett and Reverend Kearney have done a lot with that around our community garden partners to make sure that we know what's expected, because we do provide them some funds, but we require some things from them around, of course, growing a garden, but also helping us with data collection and connecting to our participants. So we've done that both with individuals, so our community garden managers, and also with some municipalities or organizations. If it's because we're using land that is a town's land, we'll have an MOU with them for that. Or if we're working with a particular organization and they may pay their our community garden manager through them, we have an MOU about that. We've also worked with performance agreements. This is actually, I think, only come up in Chapel Hill. Is that correct?
Yeah.
In Chapel Hill, we work at a low-income housing complex, South Estes Public Housing. We pretty much provide TA for them around a community garden that they have, but we're required by the town to provide UNC certificate of insurance and sign a performance agreement that we actually had to get through our legal department. So there's always some interesting things you find as you start working out in the communities. And I actually just gave a presentation in Chicago about working with policies and zoning and ordinances in cities and more rural areas, and have found that more urban areas have a lot more sort of policies and hoops you have to jump through. And in the rural communities, we've had a pretty easy time of being able to use land for gardens.
Can I ask, what is the difference really between a performance agreement and an MOU? Is there more clarity in terms of expectations of each partner?
The performance, you know, as we've worked with them, the performance agreement was something that the town of Chapel Hill provided, and it has a lot of legalese in it. It was very specific to needing insurance, et cetera. The memoranda of understanding, I think we wrote many of them. So then we could work with our partners to decide what needed to be on that.
Great. So as Molly mentioned, we're in 6 counties. We have 3 gardens in each county for 18 gardens. And we started the program last year as a way to increase food access and promote nutrition. And you know, and the nutrition side is kind of easy to understand, but gardens are also, you know, have an allure because they get people active and developing community, which all increase health in general too. So our goals were to develop the gardens to engage SNAP recipients. And our goal at each garden is to have at least 15 SNAP eligible people involved in the garden. And the goal is to have them all actively, you know, working in the garden, but we also have some situations where folks are not able to, but are part of the community, so they are able to receive some of the produce that's being grown at the garden. And we work to examine the process of farming the gardens, including working with municipalities and organizations that Molly was mentioning. So of the 18 gardens, 5 of them are directly in partnership with local municipalities. And with all of those, we've had to establish some sort of MOU. Only the one has been, you know, kind of really detailed and more hoops to jump through in Chapel Hill. And then with the others, almost all of the other 13 are with an organization in partnership with them, where they've already had, they're in the community and they've had some existing programming where we've been able to partner with them and kind of use the garden to push forward what they were doing already. So the way that we've evaluated the work, we do, the main thing is pre and post surveys in each season. So we do one survey at the beginning of the season and then one at the end, which for us, our fiscal year ends at the end of September. So it's late summer, early fall. And they're designed so that the questions are the same on each survey. And we're able to track between each participant to measure change in knowledge around nutrition and gardening over the course of the season. We also have provided most of the gardens, we've tried to provide all, but haven't been able to so far, but we will this coming year with scales. And so we measure garden yield and total yield that's being distributed. And that's also looked at, broken out by type of produce and poundage of each type of produce. And we've talked about you being able to utilize that too, to sort of turn that into an equivalent market value to understand sort of the economics behind that. We do qualitative interviews with garden managers at the end of the year. And those have been great to sort of help us understand, you know, what's working and what isn't, and how we can change what we're doing within their community in the following year to make it more effective. And so, yeah, the lessons learned on working with the groups, I mean, with municipalities, generally, for the most part, like Molly said, in the rural communities, it's not that difficult, but they are a little bit slower moving ship and require a little bit more. And we found it's just, especially with them, it's sort of really important to outline clearly what our responsibilities are and what they're not. And with the organizations, it's more important to outline clearly what we can and can't do and what we can and can't spend our money on, because the grant that we're kind of working on is extraordinarily particular in, what we can use it for. So yeah, this is just a summary of some of the survey results through the end of 2014. We're still evaluating this past year. So we saw across the population an increase in fruit and vegetable consumption and a decrease in fruit juice consumption. Expressed enjoyment and participating in the garden with an average of 8.24 on a 1 to 10 scale. 92% said they wanted to do it again this past year. And the participants learned how to grow food and save money on food at a pretty high rating on a 1 to 5 scale respectively. And so you can see the increase in garden yield between 2014 and 2015. That's total across all gardens. I should say in 2014, we only did 2 gardens in each county. So we did have more gardens this year, 12 in 2014 and 18 this past year, but still the increase is, significant. I think it's just that we learned how to better manage our side of it, and they got better at what they were doing in terms of both organization around the garden and growing food. Social marketing.
So my name is Daniella, and I'm very excited to be here, and I'm very excited about this project. I'm going to be talking about the Farmers Market Initiative, and I should say that Jasmine Kumala is here. She's on our team, and she's the team lead for our farmers market efforts. So Jasmine initiated a social marketing campaign around farmers markets accepting SNAP EBT, which is the equipment that accepts EBT redemptions for people on SNAP. And social marketing is a process that uses marketing techniques to promote a social benefit. In this case, it was the EBT usage. So we worked with 3 farmers markets in our 6 counties. That includes Chapel Hill Farmers Market, and I see Sarah Prager's here, and she works on that this initiative at that market. Reedsville Area Market, which is in Rockingham County, and Clinton Market, which is in Sampson County. And those were our only 3 counties that had farmers market that accepted these benefits. And we conducted stakeholder interviews, and we found that through that, and also with studying the literature, that a lot of barriers to accessing these benefits at farmers market, along with sort of built environment transportation issues, include a lack of awareness. So we wanted to model a campaign that really spread awareness that you can use your benefits at these food access points. And so we took sort of all the themes that we've discovered, and we took it to a graphic designer, and we created some logos and branding around those messages. And after that, we went to Piggly Wiggly and Dollar Trees and did some boots on the ground concept testing and figured out what was compelling to people. And what we found is that instead of just sort of a brand or a message like eat at your farmer's market, people really needed a directive, and they needed a call to action. So we went back to the graphic designer and we said, we want to be as direct and explicit as possible. And so you'll see on the top, we have this basket with the call to action: score quick, affordable meals at the farmer's market with EBT benefits. I should also say that through that concept testing phase, we found that people weren't familiar with the term SNAP EBT. They were more familiar with using EBT as the term for food stamps, or SNAP EBT. So we dropped the SNAP. We were really just trying to be as familiar with people and use their own language. And so the top message was most appealing to people in Chapel Hill and Reedsville. And then the bottom message, EBT benefits are your ticket to cheap, fresh foods at the farmer's market, was most compelling to people in Sampson County. And so we tried to incorporate the ticket language and model this ticket. So those were our 2 brands and call to actions that in July of last year, we implemented in a full-scale social marketing campaign. So this include banners, and this is the banner at the Chapel Hill Farmers Market, and maybe Sarah can talk about how she's used the materials, but we created mailers, it was in the radio, on newspapers, flyers, and we've evaluated that by going back to the same spots where we did the concept testing and asked about people's familiarity and saw if they recognized this campaign. And we're also going to launch the same campaign next year to kind of give this more mileage, as well as conduct a social marketing campaign around community gardens. So working with Brett and learning the language of some of his gardeners as far as what can get more recruitment, more people in this gardens, and spreading awareness on that. The farmers market also accompanied an education component, and that's because with our grant, along with PSC initiatives or the policy and environmental change, we also have a requirement to do some nutrition education. And this is where our partnerships with communities were essential, because we're looking to get folks more familiar and feel welcome at their farmers market. There's no point in spreading awareness that you can use your EBT if farmers market just is unfamiliar to you or a place you're not comfortable going. And I should say that we did these tours and food demonstration, nutrition education stands in all of our counties, and all of our counties didn't have SNAP EBT. So we were recruiting low-income SNAP users to come to the farmers market to participate in nutrition education, but not all farmers markets had EBT. So that effort is still very important, and I think it's important that we continue to partner with farmers markets so that they can get that equipment. So we held about 1 session tours 3 times during the summer at our farmers markets, and they were 90 minutes. And there was a cooking component, there was a nutrition component, and there was a tour of the farmers market, so people could feel comfortable talking to farmers. And the tour was held by a community partner. So we partnered with folks who we thought we had relationships with and could recruit people to get them at these events. And so we evaluated it through surveys after the demonstration, and then we had follow-up phone surveys a couple months later. And that one thing we found is that for the people we surveyed at the market, 33% of them, it was their first time there. Next year, we want to have an all-community cast. I would say that our chefs and our nutritionists were UNC, graduate student kind of things. And so next year, we want to partner more with programs in extension. And this is a new thing for North Carolina. There's not a lot of farmers market nutrition ed programs happening. So we've been working with NC State to develop a farmers market nutrition ed curriculum adopted by programs such as FNEP, which is the extension nutrition education arm, to kind of fold into projects that are already happening in the community. So we're not just sending our UNC team to these counties, and making sure that we're partnering on all sort of levels. The next thing I want to talk about is our Healthy Aisle project, which is a healthy retail project, which there is a dearth of research of healthy retail interventions in rural counties. So maybe some of you are familiar with healthy retail interventions in cities such as Baltimore, or there's some happening in Seattle, but there's not a lot of research on how you can improve small store retail like corner stores in rural counties. And so it's of the uttermost importance, because a lot of these stores are the food sort of outlets for people, because transportation is such an issue, and because large scale groceries like Walmart are farther from where people live. And so we worked with 2 corner stores in Lenoir County, and we identified these corner stores through the formative research of a health behavior graduate student who was working on auditing tobacco and healthy retail in corner stores. And she found that in Lenoir, there was these 2 stores that were interested in promoting their healthy food, or interested in participating in this project. And so we partnered with these 2 stores to provide some capital improvements, so shelving, signage, and then grouping the food that they did offer that was deemed healthy by the point of purchase. And though there wasn't a high quantity, We deem things as healthy. We use the CDC vending guidelines, and we also use a menu developed by the Community Transformation Grant, the CDC project that supported a lot of healthy retail projects across the state. So we used the menu established by that program as well as those guidelines, and created our own sort of UNC menu. And those items that fell into those categories were then grouped together with that promotion. And we had a lot of layers of evaluation. We used the NEMS, which is the Nutrition Environment Measurement Survey, and that was adopted for corner stores. So we used that pre and post to measure the affordability and availability of healthy food. We had conducted customer intercept surveys. We interviewed people as far as do you view this place as a healthy place to shop before and after? What type of healthy food would you buy here? We also had a purchase tracking system that we employed 3 times during this intervention for 2 weeks, where we stickered all of the products and asked the corner store manager to track every time someone purchased it. So take off the sticker and then record if it was a SNAP or non-SNAP EBT purchase. And we find that that was too burdensome on the store manager. So that evaluation metric had low fidelity. And so in 2016, we're looking to expand to a store in Orange County and in Warren County. And we are thinking of sort of changing our intervention and employing more behavioral economics nudges to impacting healthy decision-making beyond just sort of the promotion and signage and shelving, as well as sort of a robust evaluation system after we've done this sort of pilot. So I should say in that project, the corner store managers and that partnership was vital, because we were constantly working with them. Brett was in the field, just what kind of signs, what do you want it to say, just making sure that we were giving them what they wanted and this project had value to them, as well as understanding with our evaluation what was burdensome, what wasn't, and being comfortable with the fact that we were interviewing people in their store. So an example of a partner that has woven their way into all these projects is a group called Little Bud Thorbs Economic Development Association. They're in Lenoir County, and our partnership started in 2013 with SNAP-Ed. I was working with the Summer Meals Project, which is a project to get kids who qualify for federal reduced lunches during the school year access points to those free lunches during the summer. So what happens is a lot of participation falls off after the school year because kids aren't established in a system anymore, and it's up to community groups to sign up with the USDA and the state to get this funding to buy these meals and to be part of the system. And so we were recruiting folks in Lenoir County to deliver meals, to enroll in the program. And Little Bud Thorbs is also the core of their work is about youth development and athletics. And so they are an African-American group that encourages baseball with African-American kids, which, as my understanding, is not a very diverse sport in North Carolina. And so they were interested in not only serving those lunches through their camp, but also at other sites. And so we felt really early on that they understood the need of their community, and they had more of that systems approach where they were thinking about impact and all the kids at need beyond just sort of the self-serving, like this is my program and this is what we need. And so from there, things have really just grown year to year. So we now include them in our farmers market tours and demos. A partner from the group was our farmers market tour manager. So she recruited folks and did the tours. They were also our community liaison with our Healthy Aisle project. So they were in the corner store, sort of brokering that relationship, making sure that the food looked good and was appealing and was stickered when we were stickering. And so they have been vital in all of our programs. And we've also secured a grant for them with Youth Empowerment Solution, their youth advocacy organization that they're going to sort of employ 2 of their youth, Little Bud's sort of youth network, to work with our corner stores to get more advocacy around the corner store and healthy retail with local government in Lenoir County.
No, it's both of us, yeah. So yeah, over the next 2 slides, we'll talk about, with the garden project specifically, a couple of partnerships and just some of the details around those. So both the slides I'll kind of introduce, and then let our community partners talk a little more about it. So this past year, we were able to partner with Fairview Garden in the Fairview community in Hillsborough, which is an historic neighborhood. It's recently, I think in the last maybe 10 years, received habitat support. Is that right? And there was a garden already established there, and it had been for like six years, 5, 6.
Just a couple years prior to the time that we came in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was going, and it was very like the infrastructure around it was really great. I mean, a lot of good raised beds, fencing, some cisterns for water, a pavilion to gather under. So it was in really good shape, but without a good funding stream, and also I think a need for some more organization. So we just came in this last year, and we're able to partner together, and I'll let you talk a little more about it.
Yeah, it was a great partnership. UNC came in at just the right time when I think the garden needed something. Well, when you said 6 years, you were talking about before UNC came.
Oh yeah.
Right. So that's right. It had been started as a habitat garden, and after a couple of years was basically just not kept up and abandoned. And then I was involved with the Extension Master Gardeners program with another woman, and we together she'd been involved to begin with. We went together to the Community Watch Group, which is the hub of that community, and approached them about, do you want to revitalize this garden? So that had worked well, but as people have mentioned, this is always a very slow, incremental process. And the good news is that we've had a very devoted group of gardeners from the community who said, yes, we want to do this, but a lot of them are elderly women and they keep growing older. And one of the things that we really needed was to kind of prompt more commitment and buy-in and activity by younger families and younger people. And this is where the UNC project came in. The two women that are on the slide there had been garden participants from the time that we went back to the garden and said, do you want to revitalize this? And with this partnership, they just blossomed as garden leaders. They took huge amount of responsibility. Mm-hmm. And I have to say, it was kind of a surprise to me. Mm-hmm. The stipends are not that large, but they took their responsibility really seriously. Yeah. And they have carried that garden this year as we as Master Gardeners have kind of stepped back. And we really needed to do that. Master gardeners should not be leading the garden. It should be community members who are leading the garden. And that is largely what has happened with this, and it's been a huge benefit. Yeah.
And so let's see. So yeah, we use the workshops to bring some people out. And that's one thing I neglected to mention before. One of the things we implemented this past year as part of the garden project is we did 4 workshops in each county on gardening and nutrition related topics. I think we hosted 2 out at Fairview. Yeah.
Right. Which also was a real help in terms of attracting people, getting people together and learning more about the garden in a way that, having an incentive to come to the garden and participate in a program is another big benefit. And that kind of ties into the last bullet, which was the interpretation for Spanish speakers. We have a mix, largely African American and Latino population in the neighborhood. And the first question that you get from the Latino families, if you say we're having a workshop, is, will there be a Spanish speaker who can help interpret for us? And it was really great to be able to say yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Thanks. Yeah. So that was so Fairview, and that'll will continue in the upcoming year to develop that partnership, and that's an example of a good relationship we've had, a very smooth one throughout so far, which has been the case in most of our partnerships. Not all. So these are 2 organizations we've been able to partner with in Duplin County. And we actually worked with them on the garden project from the outset. So last year as well as, or 2014 as well as 2015. And And I have them together. We kind of think of them as one because from the outset they kind of partnered. One of them is an organization that grows a lot of food. Their heart is in farming and getting youth involved in farming. And so they had a lot of food. And then the other organization, so that's Reach, and the other organization, Cornerstone, has a very strong network and can access a lot of people. They grew a little bit, but we thought the way that we envisioned it was the two could work together to get a lot of food to people who need it. And so in 2014, everything seemed fine. And then this past year, seemingly suddenly, it grew. They grew very resentful of our partnership and somewhat distrustful, and just felt like we didn't have it all on the table. And I wasn't totally sure where it was all coming from. Fortunately, at that point, Reverend Kearney had been working with us more and more, and particularly in Duplin County already. And we were able to involve him in that. And he has some skills already in that area. And so I'll let you talk a little bit more about what that was like.
There were undercurrents, I'm sorry. And it's really important to know the history of a community. And what we're trying to do, we're trying to put two low resource organizations together who had been competing for crumbs. So they were saying yes, but they were pushing back. And also knowing the history of the community, these organizations were familiar with the different types of research, community-based participatory research or placement research, and they didn't understand how this research was defined. And they were saying, well, we understand what institutional racism is, and you didn't come to us, but we had to really go back and talk about the different types of research and how this wasn't what they were looking at, but they could use these type of partnerships to leverage their voice in the community. So understanding the history and what's not being said, the undercurrents. And so we had to back up a little bit and begin to listen and value their input and show ways that they could benefit by working together. Even though the funds weren't that great, they could use these research and the data to leverage their voice to deal with social issues in their community, because they're a community who's been fighting years because of social injustices around environmental issues. So we had to really go back and listen and show them how this research, even though it was not a lot of dollars, because they were used to get bigger dollars, could be used to leverage their power to change systems.
Absolutely. Yeah, so, it was sort of a wake-up call for us, because as Molly mentioned at the beginning, we try to approach everything we're doing with an anti-racism lens. And when that, they started talking about institutional racism and feeling very resentful in that way, then, we engaged in a series of meetings, and the whole team went out at one point just to really try to understand what's going on and how we can continue to work together and make it better. And fortunately, over the course of those meetings, we have gotten to a place where we've developed a better understanding. We've laid out clearer a clearer groundwork on what we can do and what we can't do, and just let them understand, or help them to understand more clearly, our funder and how strict it is and why things are the way they are. And it's not just us trying to pull strings on our end.
I commend Brett, because he represented the system.
Yeah, I was the man. Yeah,
he stood strong, but he represented the system. And so when you go with your project, represent a system that a lot of people consider unjust. So you got to be prepared not to internalize that and throw it back at the community.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brett.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, yeah, it was a good partnership. So anyway, we're working with them again next year, and hopefully it will be smooth. We'll see how it goes. But it was difficult, but we have been able to use it to grow internally and to get past that and to make our programming better. About Warren County?
Okay, Warren County. That's Brett there. We're doing raised bed gardens. And this is one of our gardens in Warren County. Let's see if I got the right button there.
There you go.
Okay. Avenue Mobile Home Park. This is really not one of the low-hanging fruit. This is a community that really needs this project. It's been a part of since 2014, and it served as a summer meal site in 2014. And just by being a partner and serving as a summer meal site, it became a focal point of the county. And they got immediate benefit because the owner of the mobile home park, which had let it run down, immediately got out there and began to work and develop the roads again. So I said, wow, this is wonderful. As we're getting data for long-term change, the community is benefit immediately because the focus was on the community. Also, we got feedback from our garden manager, who is a dynamic community leader, and she's pulled together core people to really run the garden. But she says that when you put focus on when your guys out here, it raised the energy level of the residents to realize somebody care about them. And so that picture you just saw, we were out there a few weeks ago putting in raised beds. The park has 75 to 80 mobile homes and a lot of the population that we're looking to serve. The owner is glad to have us there because if we can raise a wonderful community garden right there in the center of the garden, it's going to make things look better and people take more pride in where they live. Because a lot of the families are moving in and out, tracking participation data has been a challenge. But listening to our garden leader and others, they were saying that, you know, some of the people, when it comes to surveys, they're sort of hesitant to do surveys because they don't know how it's going to affect their benefits. Also, we're pushing fresh produce, but some of them have extenuating circumstances. They don't have a refrigerator to put it in, or the electricity is off, or the stove is off. So me as a community person is, and Brett as well, how do we get our research, but make sure that the people we're asking to be in research at least getting their basic needs? So we're looking at this year doing forums to bring in large communities to talk about what we're doing and how we can ensure that these people we ask to get research at least live in a standard they can participate. One thing is at that site, they don't even have a place to dump their stuff. So a lot of the trash is piled there and it blows across the garden. But at least when they go, they're out there picking up trash now. So while we're getting our data, we're hoping that we can bring about some changes that would make those people we're asked to participate feel better about themselves and their communities. So that's F&M. And again, it's not one of the low-hanging fruit. This requires a little more work than we thought at first, because initially our garden leader thought she had all the network and resources she needed to do this garden. But as we began to move forward, many of the people she was depending on weren't there. So we're stepping up and being more present with them. Warren County Senior Center has been a partner since 2014. And this is a good partnership because the Senior Center provides the transportation. We've got to capture the audience. But we had to get their attention because many of these people say, well, we've grown stuff and we are beyond that. But once they developed a partnership with Corporate Extension, and they got grant funding to put in raised beds. And at first it didn't look too interesting, but then when stuff began to grow, the interest level grew. And our garden manager, he's a novice, he's a New Yorker. Nothing wrong with New Yorkers. But he knew nothing about garden, but this has made him a big hero at the center now. And a lot of those retired people who once lived on farms and do things have stepped in. And this year they had all sort of tomatoes and even little watermelons and butter beans, greens, peppers, cucumbers. One day I went by and one of the seniors was really upset because one of the seniors went out and picked watermelons and he wasn't supposed to do it because he needed to get with a garden leader so we can track it. You know, she just took ownership of that. And so we're looking forward to continuing the relationship. If anyone knows what to do with groundhogs, that's the problem now. So that's moving well along. Cold Springs Baptist Church, where I serve as assistant to the pastor and health ministry coordinator, we had a couple garden projects with University of North Carolina. Harvest of Hope, which is a one-year project. Then we had the Faith Farm in the Future, which is a 2-year research project. And now we're doing this SNAP Ed community garden. Our garden manager is a very knowledgeable and resourceful contractor. So, you know, his schedule like changes by a phone call or whatever. but he has a high interest level in being engaged in our community partnerships. He's worked at our garden site at the church, and he developed a garden on his street called the Elm Street Garden, which community members would come and pick. Our lesson learned is that we want to continue with work with our contractor because he's got all the equipment, he's got access to topsoil. I mean, but he's not always available. And we were asking him to build a garden and also be a community organizer. So now we have an opportunity, we've developed these relationships. Now we have to look at our basket and see what we have, what skill levels, and we want to keep him as a partner, but we're gonna look at a way that we don't require him to do community organization or surveys or tracking, but he can bring in the dirt, he can use his big equipment to move stuff. And so now we are looking at what we've learned, how we can better develop this relationship with our garden leader and even working with other gardens in Warren County. I believe that's it for me. Thank you.
So you've heard several stories about how our partnerships have been going. And some have been good, some have been challenging, as is usually the case. So we're in the midst right now of talking a lot more about how we can continue to strengthen our partnerships and our work, particularly from an anti-racism lens. So a couple of things. We've been going out and meeting with our partners, trying to do site visits. We have a team of about 11 to 12 folks, depending on how you count it. That's just the people at UNC. So we have a strong bench of folks, and we're trying to make sure we draw on all the expertise that we have. I've sent as many of our staff as I can to the Undoing Racism training that goes on here in Chapel Hill. It's also going on in Durham. There's phase 1 and phase 2. So many of us have been to phase 1. Some of us have been to phase 2. Yeah, most of us in here have been to that, as well as Jasmine has been there. So we're working on continuing to do that sort of training. Stepping back just a little, because we're working now on thinking about doing some formative work. Some information about this particular funding source is it's not like applying to the NIH and just telling them what your idea is. The USDA has some pretty prescribed direction on what they want us to do. So for the first several years, we just did what they, followed their guidelines, but we're pushing the envelope somewhat now because it's hard to just sort of do CBPR work within those structures. And so we're sort of stepping back and thinking how we can do that. And one of the things is to do some more formative work in all 6 of our counties. And we're going to be planning that with doing listening sessions now. We've just found some things out sort of by the way, things that we found out through some other work that we realized we really need to take into consideration context. Particularly around our farmers market work, we found some things like in one of our communities, the farmers market is located next to, it's in a community location where one of the features highlighted is an old, I think, Confederate ship, but to the African Americans in that community, that's a slave ship. And so trying to promote having folks go there, well, not the best idea. I mean, that wasn't working, and why should we be doing that? So we're rethinking doing that in particular. The other thing we found in working out in Warren County is we're trying to get folks to go out to the farmers market, and we're learning that a lot of African American communities that we're working with, they used to have to go to sort of alternative places to get their food. Now they can go to farmers markets. I mean, now they can go to grocery stores, and it's easier for them. They're not shunted off to different places to go. And so as we're trying to move them back to alternative sites, maybe that's not the best way to go. So these are things we just learned very recently. And so we're working on that in particular. And I don't know if I mentioned, I'm not sure if we mentioned, but you probably could tell from pictures, almost all of the communities and our community partners are African American. One of the things that we do as part of our team is we have sort of journal clubs or times where we talk about research, and Jasmine found some good readings for us to do. And one of them I just wanted to point out was trauma-informed community building. There's some information on finding it. I would suggest people read it. It's a pretty short read, but it talks about how to work within communities that have faced trauma around racism and history of slavery in their community. And these are just some 4 tenets or sort of suggestions that come out of that around, making sure that first you just don't do any more harm to the community. So being very careful about the work you do. And making sure that we accept people where they are. So not trying to get them to do things or work with them on projects that it's not acceptable. Also working to empower the community or have them self-determine what they want to do instead of us going in and saying, we're going to make you go to farmers markets now. So that's really what we're trying to do now is see how do folks want to access food in their communities? Where are they already doing it? Where are the places they don't feel comfortable going, and where do they feel comfortable going? And then having a reflective process, which is also a lot of what we're doing now. We're stepping back and thinking, what have we done so far? What hasn't worked? What's not going to work? And where have we sort of been tone deaf in terms of what we're doing in communities? So like I mentioned, we're working on planning sessions, and we're planning listening sessions in all of our communities. We'll hope to do that throughout the fall and winter so that in the springtime, we can at least change up a little bit what we're doing and making it more acceptable. And then also building peer-to-peer learning. So we're trying to do a lot more where the people in the community are deciding what's done. They're leading workshops and things. They're doing the recruitment. They're deciding on activities. And we're just more of a backbone to provide input, technical assistance. Of course, we do have the funding. So we're always mindful that there's an imbalance of power because we come with the money. We come from UNC, as Brett and Reverend Kearney were saying. So trying to level the playing field as much as we can, given those constraints. Yes. So it's a quick snapshot. But yes, this is something we're actively working on and struggling with. So that's all I had. If folks have questions. Any questions? Lynn?
Yes, I understand there's a Healthy Corner Store initiative that's going on, the American Heart Association and some other people on that. Are you all involved in that at all, or does that fit in with what you're doing?
There are many efforts around healthy retail. It's sort of the new hot thing. It's also important because there's lots of food swamps, places where there's lots of fast food and corner stores and not so much full service grocery stores. So there's a lot of work in this area. So that group's working on it. We could probably name 5 other groups working on it. Yes, we're trying to be in touch with all of them. A lot of them, as Daniella mentioned, are not doing work in rural areas. It's challenging because of distribution, trying to get healthy food into those communities. A lot of those folks will go to Walmart, buy the food for their corner store and bring it back. And so we're trying to work too on that sort of distribution, how we can maybe bring corner stores together to buy from one particular farmer or something. But it's more challenging because of transportation and distribution. But yes, we're lots of information to assimilate.
Like a CSA for a corner store?
Could be. In one part of the state, they're doing that around sweet potatoes. So we're trying to learn more about that too.
And then one other question.
Yeah.
What are you doing, or are you doing anything with community gardens in schools?
Not as part of our project. Other folks in the state with similar funding are doing school gardens. And that's a big push. It's just, we've been mostly working, we don't focus on children. We just have chosen to work mostly with adult populations. But it's a great intervention. Sarah?
Yeah, I was curious how you recruit SNAP participants, people using SNAP to participate in gardens and things, especially,
Yeah, so a lot of it's just kind of where we are. I mean, a lot of the gardens, we have a couple of gardens that are at public housing facilities, one at the mobile home park where Franny talked about. The areas in general, even when they're not at those kinds of locations, are often lower income areas. So just the population around is usually qualifies. But at all of the gardens, we are able to track and measure whether a person is a SNAP recipient is easy, but then also SNAP eligible, which is sort of our criteria. Mm-hmm. So we're able to know who is and who isn't in order to report on that, but we don't exclude anybody from the garden. So if somebody kind of is above that line, you know, there's no, you know, cutoff that person can't be involved. So, yeah, so we also work some with a DSS in some of the counties to try to understand, how to track folks or how to reach folks. But, you know, we leave a lot of it too to our guard managers who know the community and know what's going on. Can help us out there.
Necessarily going door to door or something like that, or flyers or advert. Like, I'm just curious.
How we have done some flyering, and especially locally, where we kind of understand the landscape a little better, in specific areas like in Chapel Hill to get some, you know, get folks out. But yeah, not a lot really. I mean, we really leave most of it to, and as I mentioned before, with most of the gardens, we're partnering with organizations where they have you know, they have the reach already, so it really helps a lot.
And I think we look in the future to deal more so with DSS and inform them of what we're doing, and maybe they can direct more people towards projects.
Melissa, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have a number of questions, but one of them is, so most of the work you've done is in more of the rural areas. Do you have plans to do things in some of the more urban areas where there are similar food deserts? Or obviously there's meat everywhere, but
No. Well, Chapel Hill, but our thing is rural. There's a lot of folks doing this work in urban areas. Where sort of our research piece or part of it is to really extrapolate what we already know about urban areas and how we can make them work in rural communities. So that's our thing.
And then a quick question. I've noticed a lot of development, and more so in more of the urban areas, but I wonder if you're seeing that also in some of the rural areas, and that, for example, there's a flea market that I would go to buy lots of groceries in Southeast Raleigh, and they've had a food deserts there whenever the grocery stores have been closed over the last couple of years. So it's prime property now that lots of people are there right off 540, and so it's being closed. So that's being removed as another resource in that community. So I mean, this is fairly new that you're a couple years into it, but do you notice changes with as properties being used for gardens that it's becoming more popular and folks are recognizing like, oh, we could do something else there, and is there competition?
I think Jasmine is our farmers market and urban planner on the staff, and so she can speak to this, but she's creating maps this year of sort of all our cities where we have gardens and farmers markets, and really profiling what are the assets, land use. Jasmine, if you want to talk more about that.
Yeah, and I'll say it to your specific question. I don't think our project has been going on long enough. Like, I don't think we've developed sort of like measures to see if those like actions have happened. But that would be something really interesting, I think, for us to look into as we're sort of going along. But I don't think we have an answer to that.
Right.
So first of all, I want to thank you for talking about what doesn't work or what hasn't worked as well as what works, because ultimately I think that's where we learn the hard way, but we learn. So thank you for that. The question I have is, there's obviously a lot of coordination going on, or thinking about who else in the community do we need to involve or talk to. But when I look at the counties where you are, there are other UNC folks in those counties doing other things. So what have been the challenges or abilities to link to other UNC efforts in some of those same counties?
So some of it we built on the research that was already going on, like in Lenoir County. So, but also being mindful. There's what's the group that went little? NC Growth. NC Growth is here at UNC. Actually, I can't think.
Sure. I'll just say quickly that just starting, I guess this past summer, we started trying to be intentional about connecting with other groups who we know that they're working in the counties we're in. So we partnered with NC Growth. We've attended so far just one of their Eastern North Carolina working group meetings to understand what's happening. We met with Marcia Parrott, which was
So NC Growth is the economic development initiative out of Kearney Flagler. And so working with the business school and the social impact programs there. And then with the School of Government, who do a lot of technical assistance with local governments. We work with folks there.
Because I think this is also how to potentially address some of the problems you had about this grant may not be the one bringing resources, but the ability And I guess I was also thinking of a place like the school of social work, when we talk about SNAP, or, you know, if they have connections with some of the social service folks who would help you all anyway.
Yeah, so sometimes we're coming in the wake of other research.
Exactly. Well, that's what I'm saying, it's not always a good relationship.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to sort of redefine your purpose.
Well, and one of the issues with REACH and Cornerstone is that REACH has been partnering with Steve Wing with the HOG, CAFO environmental justice work for a long time. And that is awesome, true CDPR work. And that was the history they had. So when we came in with some pretty strict things that we needed to do, there was some confusion about that. And Cornerstone had been our center's community partner for 10 years. I mean, part of more than 20 years. And as that partnership, they went and had like retreats at the beach every year. We can't use USDA funds like that. So not to answer, that's not answering your question, Lynn, but just giving you some context in terms of
But I
other
think
people.
what it does speak to is, we talk a lot about us trying to understand the community context. And I think it's also incumbent on us to help the community understand the institutional context.
Yes.
It is truly a partnership, we've got to understand, you know, and that helps, I think, with some of those things.
And hopefully my role would help play that, because that's what I talk to the community members about, having a bigger vision for your community. And how does these various projects, whether it be research or placement projects, help move you towards a bigger vision? And we talked about when we meet, evaluating everything that our partners bring to the table, a history, and what's your vision, what's your mission? And how can our project, which is research, help you with your mission? I can say I appreciate UNC and Molly and others who helped me in Warren County with developing our vision and constantly building on that and leveraging and engaging our community at bringing about sustainable changes in our community. Ownership, you know. And so I think that's an important piece that differs from other research that's been happening in our community, because research has been happening where people would come and gather our data, use the data to accomplish what they want, and those people that the data and information is released from are still sitting in the same place. But now we're able to use these projects to empower our people to be accountable for what they do have, but also acquire more information, capacity to be more engaged in the long term. So yeah, bringing in partners and understanding what's happening in the community, connecting with that is important.
As a follow-up to Lynn's question, are we developing any sort of master list or directory of organizations at UNC that are working with communities, and so communities want assistance with various problems, they know who to go to?
Well, Jennifer Marsh and I are looking at each other laughing. We've just been having a lot of conversations. There are some, I guess the easiest answer is, it's been tried.
And we're proposing it
proved
again.
way beyond anybody's capabilities. It was the magnitude of it. And it's still being discussed. And so I think the short answer is not right now, but I think there's interest in doing something that will help facilitate some of that. But it's not happening.
And best practices too, because the economic developers go into community very different than public health folks. So it's like, we wouldn't do that again.
They have a project that's just been working on exactly.
Right, and we're proposing it next week to the leaders.
Good. So, can you talk a little bit more about that? You're trying to like sort of map what everyone is doing all over the state to make the world better?
Well, it's to collect, our idea is to collect all the different projects and stories, not just the research, but more, and try and put it in one place where it could be collected. But I'm giving the disclaimer that that's our idea, that nobody has bought into that.
Is that through the Center of Civil Rights?
No, this is through a ULE project.
Which is and as I say, we had a database like this until the mid-2000s that we were working on. It was pretty significant, but the resources to keep it up. A database is only as good as what the money, or the information is only as good as what put into it. And what we found is that if you can't give out good current information, it's better not to have it.
Right.
And so I think this group has been talking about some of those challenges, but it's a very complex and mostly a very costly thing
The good news is everyone we've talked to has been very excited and interested in it, so we're hoping to get some sort of traction.
Yeah, I have a question. Just to follow up on the conversation, we go to certain areas in North Carolina repeatedly, not just UNC, but other institutions. How do you deal with community partners burnout? Because they keep getting tapped over and over by different institutions, different people within the university. I mean, because they have their capital, but their capital is being depleted every time. So how do you manage? Did you run into that problem at all? And that was to you, Reverend.
I think Warren County ran into the problem many years ago, not just from the institution, but also from my leaders, because every time we got new leaders, there was a new survey, and it would go on the shelf, and nothing ever changed. So people just become disenfranchised and just didn't want to be engaged. So I think it happens, and I think telling our story and connecting our community with the research and how has that research benefited. And so I brought a postcard I'd like to give each of you. And for me, for my level, I do a Facebook page, and it connects all the research and how, starting with our community has been, used to be a place of wellness where people came for the springs and the hotels and resorts. Then we got dumped on for PCV landfill, and from that we birthed the environmental justice movement. We celebrate the fact that a small community started a movement in 2012. Since then, we are moving into solar energy. So tying in these research projects to actually things that are moving our community, sort of like helps with that burnout, you know. And maybe they're not making big steps, but making little steps. So I think importantly, telling our story and giving it back to our community, and you know, in a way that they can understand it and see the significance of it.
We also try to be very intentional about having something tangible in the community. So we're not just, taking data and going back like has happened. So making sure that we provide some level of stipend for all of our partners. We also provide supplies and things like that. So we have gardens with fences, et cetera. So just being very intentional about that and helping them figure out sustainability plans and letting them know that we're in this for a while. Luckily, this is semi-stable funding. I mean, it's pretty stable funding. It's a nice place to be in for partnerships.
How much are your garden manager stipends?
So they've been 1,000 for the year, and now this coming year we're going to go up to 1,500. So it's not meant to be a job, but some compensation.
Yeah.
In way with supplies, do you provide T-shirts with the name of the garden or the locales to create a sense of pride and of 2014, 2015? This is my T-shirt, and then they can wear it around town, and then they can work in that T-shirt, or if you provide gloves, which are so cheap, special green gloves, and then I got them here. I know it sounds small, but I see people wearing T-shirts, and I have a T-shirt for the Master Gardener program. I put it on, and I know it sounds small, but it's like I'm in that mode.
We're gonna hand out some stuff to you.
No, we have not done that yet. That's a great idea. We have banners at each garden that we've, designed and made, but we haven't done that yet. I heard Molly saying, I don't know if we can do it or not, but it's something that would be good to look into. Because you're right, it's small, but it's a unifier, and it makes you proud of what you're doing.
I mean, they could even, if you had a program where you could use, as a kid, I did potato prints, with paint that, so they create their own T-shirt, and then and adults will wear that too. It's not just kids.
Yeah, we did find this past year we designed water models, and they weren't distinct for each garden, but they had a kind of a picture of a leaf on them and a healthy logo across the bottom. They were like candy. I mean, we couldn't stop giving them out. So I think that the shirt would go even further in that direction. People just really love it.
And like I said, we are working on a social marketing campaign around gardening. So we're going to host focus groups and understand what about gardening is appealing and what sort of messages we can design.
The other thing about the shirt, you wouldn't think, but people don't like wearing their regular clothes gardening. They need gardening clothes, and it may seem like a small thing, but if you feel like you have a t-shirt that you don't care that you get messed up, I mean, that might be a limiting thing for people that they don't want to mess up their regular clothes.
Folks who benefit from the gardens, are they expected to give a talent or a share, or is it just kind of like you build it and they will come, or how does that work?
We've tried not to, or we've grown to the point of understanding that it's a good idea and not to follow the if you build it they will come model. It doesn't seem to work. I mean, we haven't had any where we've done that and they failed, but there have been some that have been challenging getting people involved. So, for instance, this past year when we added 6 gardens, we really we went to communities, but we also waited until we had situations where there were multiple levels of buy-in, and we felt pretty confident that we would be able to make it run. But we don't look for, I mean, there's not a specific formula we're looking for, just mostly general interest and a location that we could do. Yeah.
Hi. What's the long-term vision? Is it more gardens? Is it for people to start setting up their own gardens off that location? Where's it going 5-10 years from now?
That is a good question. So we expanded to 18 gardens last year. We're just starting our new year and we did not add more gardens because 18 is a lot to manage. And we want to sort of grow more in depth with those communities instead of starting more. But we are hoping to empower folks and working on sustainability plans with them. And of course, we'd also like to see people growing gardens on their own at home. So it's something that we actually measure as part of our research on that. Where this is actually discussions we're having right now that we want to look at having a 5-year plan of how this works. We don't see expanding into more communities because we almost bit off more than we can chew having 6 communities, 6 counties. So, and they all have different contexts.
I will say too, just quickly, this doesn't really answer your question, but one of the positive stories that we have is one of the communities we work with is the Kohari community in Sampson County, and they've really taken it and run with it. So it's not something that we've really done in terms of the growth that they've seen, but so they've started building gardens in people's backyards now. They've gotten to the point where they've grown so much food and really made it a hub of the community that other folks now are beginning to bring their excess and put it into a pile. And so this whole culture of sharing has emerged, and they've built it in a lot of their programming and at the tribal center. It's like a showpiece when they do their powwow in the fall. So it's, they've utilized it in a way to really build up a lot of other things in the community.
Building on that, I think this is time that we listen to the community, see what their vision is. Like in Warren County, is we are reinstituting the food system where we used to be a farm community and we stopped growing. So we're growing local, buying local. And so looking at the vision for community and how this research and its partners can take a part of that bigger vision, whether it's just growing for themselves locally or community gardens, or even being within production part of it. But connecting our young people back to the land, or the families, both the things.
So you have a question, then you.
So I'm Sonda Overwall from the School of Nursing, and sometimes we have to think out of the box in terms of partnerships. And so I've been in Lee County once a week each semester doing a clinical with groups that do a community assessment project. And last spring, I had a group of 3 or 4 students do food insecurity in Lee County. So we have really compelling data. There's already a group down there working on food access. So I was kind of hopeful that we have the infrastructure potentially to help, work with the community, because that's the focus of this course, in a way that maybe you hadn't thought about. So when you're thinking about those partnerships, don't forget the academic side as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, you.
Okay. You mentioned earlier that you were already sort of pushing the envelope on the requirements of your USDA funding. Now or in the future, how are you going to balance the needs of your funding versus the outcomes of the community empowerment reflection process?
That's a good question. That. So like, for one example, like suggesting a t-shirt, USDA requires that we can't give anything away to a community member that's more than $4. So we're always trying to figure out what we can do. We had to fight with the USDA about if we could pay for fencing for the gardens. Yeah. I mean, that had to be, floated all the way up to federal government. The federal USDA. It's about that. So this is constantly, daily straddling what we want for our communities and what we can use the funding for constantly. So how do we balance it? A lot of creative.
I think it's important to understand where the funding is moving on a national level, how it's impacted by policy. SNAP-Ed is part of the Farm Bill, which is up in 2018. So just as much as you can, understanding the national and political context of your funding. And also something Molly didn't mention is we're on another project where we work with SNAP-Ed and FNAP, which is another community nutrition program on a regional level, and where we can, influencing how we think these programs should be structured, meaning taking more of a policy environmental change lens. So we're fortunate in that we can impact sort of the regional or national thinking on these programs. So where you can do that.
Go ahead.
I serve on the board of directors for the Warren County Department of Social Services, and they're dealing with the changes in funding and policies and infrastructure. I'm saying now we need to get this information to the consumers and to the partners in the community. So hopefully moving forward, we can do forums and meetings that bring in these other partners and talk about the true issues and how this research and our partnerships can maybe help change policies or people's education knowledge, where they can vote in and vote out people that best serve their interests. So empowering people, educate people to be engaged.
One quick comment, one question. Hats might be something to consider. I don't know how much the hats, but to keep people shaded and working in the garden, that's something it's like got the health message associated with being in the sun. And then you mentioned working with communities on sustainability plans. I think a lot of you probably know we're working on a strategic sustainability plan for the university. And so I'm very curious to know what you are thinking of in terms of your sustainability plans with communities.
So that's mostly how to sustain the activities and programs that are already in the community in case we should leave. In case all of a sudden the Farm Bill decides they're going to cut SNAP-Ed funding. So that's
so more than traditional continuity.
Yes.
Are you measuring any of the health outcomes? And how have you seen any improvements or by your gardens or tours?
Yes, and sorry we couldn't. We're right in the middle. We just did all our post-test data collection within the last, we're still getting some data in. But yes, we look at knowledge and attitudes around eating, healthy eating. We look at fruit and vegetable consumption and things like that. We have seen some changes. Brett showed a little bit around our gardens with people eating more fruits and vegetables. Honestly, we're finding with our farmers market tours that there's not really enough dose to really see much difference, but we're hoping to at least build comfort level of folks going to farmers markets. But yeah, we definitely look at health outcomes.
I'm just wondering that idea of comfort level and feeling, community feeling like they're not being targeted in the Warren County. That do you share before you present to an audience of where else this is happening so that people feel like, oh, we're part of a larger effort? And then if they know somebody in another county, like, oh, you're doing this at your church, is this? So, I mean, people know people in different parts of the state and they might share, and it not just normalizes it, but it creates like a momentum and kind of an excitement about it. But I was just wondering if you do that. And I know we're seeing images by a slideshow and we're all seeing it, and that might not be possible when you're talking to people. But you could also have photographs, you could have bulletin boards, you could show on your camera, hey, this is happening 30 miles away as well. And do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course.
Well, the branding we're doing, will have that sort of unification. We do also want to talk about vision. We do want to create sort of community coalitions where the farmers, the gardens especially, are using each other as assets, and we can kind of back out of the funding and the literal like dirty work. I guess that, I don't know, Reverend and Jasmine, how do you think that the branding kind of extends to that?
Well, I would say, specifically within each county, all of the gardens know of one another and generally have met, and we try to facilitate that as much as possible. And then when all of the gardeners know to all of the counties that we're working in, we'll talk about that regularly and share, when it's applicable to a particular situation, share best practices. One of our folks this past year suggested, for the coming year, maybe like a periodic newsletter to highlight one garden and something specific that's happening there with some photos, just to share with folks and draw it more together. So we've talked about doing that. So we haven't, nothing formal, but anecdotally, and we just do it informally as much as we can.
Yeah, I mean, I'll agree for the farmers markets. It's been the same. I think we haven't haven't done it formally, but we do sort of speak about the other counties we're working in and let people know what's going on in the farmers market.
And we are actually just in the middle of developing a logo that will go across all of our things. It's the first time we're doing that. But for that reason, we wanted to sort of brand all of the efforts together so people know that they're in a large effort going on.
Is there any thought given to trying to use that economies of scale too, when you're at 18 gardens, of trying to send out like a central listserv for what needs to be done now? I work in a local garden, and the way we keep people up to date is to send out a listserv what needs to be done the following week in terms of what needs to be planted, what needs to be prepped, when ground cover needs to be put in, things like that. And that was something that would be fairly consistent across the multiple gardens where you work.
Yeah, we haven't done that, and sort of, part of the reason I came on is that I had some of the background in farming, and so that was one of the reasons. But what we came to find is that a lot of the communities do too, at least most of them, or they want to own it, and so it's been sort of a delicate balance between figuring out how much to provide guidance and then how much to let them run with it. And we sort of just let everybody run with it in the beginning, and that's still the main thrust. We are starting to try to, this isn't exactly what you're talking about, but coach folks somewhat on building raised beds. Do it with them when we can, but also try to shift some of the gardens to that, whereas before it was sort of old school, big plot, in ground, in rows, that I think is unattractive to a lot of people who maybe grew up doing that at their grandfather's farm, hoeing a full row for 8 hours. It's like, we don't want to do that anymore. So if you do something that's more novel and easier and different, then that might have more buy-in. So we are, at first we just let it go, and now we're starting to try to provide a little more guidance, but trying to find what the right balance is in doing that.
Yes. Sorry. What I have seen is very effective is for communities to send out a wish list. And so like when you're talking about getting funding for the fence, there might be somebody who's not directly involved, but loves the people that, who are involved, or just says, I have this wood hanging out in my backyard. Why are they asking the government to pay for it? Why do they ask me? And they don't. But if you had a wish list, people can just drop it off and say, I thought you might need this. I have an old, watering can or whatever, something like that. I think her dancing.
Yes, I think you touched right in on the anger we had with certain part because he said, we know USDA's got a lot of money, and y'all are just giving us the crumbs, and you're just racism. And then we had to say, well, no, this is the funding we have, but we can help you with developing your networks, your local resources. We can help you develop your plan, and then we can do the research and provide for these basic things. But let's bring in network partners and engage them in kind and all the things. And so I think we're at that stage now with a lot of our partners where they're comfortable with our relationship. Maybe they're not satisfied with the total amount of money, but they now see we can accomplished a lot just by partnering and tapping into local resources in kinds.
One more question.
I'm from the Kearney Institute, and I just want to mention that I'm so glad that you mentioned about NC Club. And I didn't mention we don't have a capability to maintain a database per se, but we welcome anyone who is interested in coming to our quarterly meeting. I think the next one is the 17th. It's either 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. Our purpose is just get to know one another, your research needs or your research project, and share honors in different communities. So, and sometimes we're able to provide some resources. But I just want to mention that yes, I welcome your coming to join us. If you're interested to meet or let anyone know, we'd love to have you there.
Thanks
for
coming.
Yeah.
North Carolina Economic Development.
Thank you all so much for coming and for being so engaged and having so many questions. That was fun. So a few follow-up things. You should get an email link, maybe from me or either from the registration system for evaluation. So we'd love feedback about how we can improve the seminar series and things that you liked as well. Also, if you have ideas for the Food for All theme, you're welcome to email them to me. I think you got a confirmation email from me or at hpdt@unc.edu, and I'm happy to take those suggestions. In addition, please come to the next seminar, which Lisa is January 22nd. January 22nd, and it will be focused on implementation science. Yes.
There's an edible landscape project starting on campus. If anyone wants to get involved with that, Emily Auerbach is the chancellor's fellow working on that. Edible landscape.
Oh, and this hopefully is recorded as a Google Hangout, and it will be on YouTube if you want to share
Oh, that's what you have to do. I think you went to sleep.
I don't know, this is